Imagine this. You wake up in ancient Egypt, the air thick with incense and passive-aggressive divine expectations. A relative just died. You think your job is to cry, wear linen, and maybe pose dramatically at the funeral? Nope. You're the designated ritual executor because someone heard you once say, "I'm spiritual but not religious." Big mistake, because now you're reenacting the death and resurrection of Osiris, the god who invented dramatic exits. And let's be clear, he only died once. You're going to spiritually die 30 times before this day is over, while hauling jars of human guts, chanting in demotic, and pretending like smearing black makeup under your eyes is for holiness, not mental breakdown. This isn't just a funeral. This is a 72-day cosmic paperwork marathon dressed as a theatrical nightmare with 0 coffee breaks and a lot of crocodile dung. So buckle up. Today isn't about honoring the dead. It's about not getting cursed for eternity because you misplaced a spleen or offended a god with bad pronunciation. Let's dive in. Welcome to the world's most stressful funeral, starring you and one extremely demanding corpse. You didn't expect your day to start with death, but here we are. The sun is barely over the horizon, and someone is already sobbing loudly outside your mud brick home. You stumble toward the commotion, still groggy, still hoping this is someone else's problem. It's not. It's your uncle, dead, rigid, already beginning to smell like boiled onions and destiny. And then your cousin, the self-appointed spiritual advisor of the family, looks at you with bloodshot eyes and says the words that begin your personal descent into divine torment. He wanted a full Osiris ritual, and you're doing it. You laugh, she doesn't, no one does. Because apparently, last week you mumbled something about understanding the gods during a drinking session with temple novices. And now the family thinks you're qualified to perform the most sacred, most complex, most ridiculously overcomplicated burial tradition in the ancient world. Here's the basic idea. Osiris, god of the dead, once got murdered by his own brother, chopped into pieces, scattered across Egypt, magically reassembled by his goddess wife, brought back to life temporarily, and then installed as ruler of the underworld. Naturally, every nobleman who dies now wants that experience. The divine VIP pass to eternity. Your uncle was a mid-level grain counter, but in death, he insists on god-tier treatment. So now it's your job to oversee a funeral that's less mourn the departed and more reenact an ancient myth with deadly precision. If you misplace a spleen, forget a hymn, or light the wrong incense, the dead won't just be offended, they'll come back. And they'll bring friends. You don't get time to grieve, you get orders. A priest shuffles in with a scroll longer than your arm and says, "The purification must begin before sunset. May Osiris judge your hands as steady. Steady hands, you've barely had breakfast." You're still trying to remember if Osiris is the green-faced one or the jackal one. He's the green one. The jackal's taken. That's Anubis. He'll be watching your every move, silently judging, like a celestial tax auditor. You're given linen, natron salt, knives, incense pellets, resin pots, and a blank stare. "Start with the washing," the priest mutters before leaving, as in abandoning you alone with a corpse and divine expectations. Your first task is to cleanse the body, but you don't just pour water over it and call it holy. No. You must wash it in palm wine and Nile water, which sounds elegant until you realize both are stored in cracked clay jugs next to a goat who's chewing on what might be part of the funeral shroud. You drag the body into the courtyard, sweat already dripping down your back. It's not even mid-morning, and you've reached a new level of spiritual anxiety that deserves its own pyramid wall carving. You try to keep a straight face as you pour the wine over your dead uncle's feet, while whispering a prayer that sounds suspiciously like a bread recipe you heard once. The neighbors are watching. The ibis is watching. The flies are forming a choir. The goat is making eye contact. The priest is probably peeking through the wall to see if you faint. You won't yet, but the real horror is still to come. Your uncle's body lies in front of you, wet and pale under the morning sun, and you realize this isn't just a farewell. This is an exam, the ancient kind, where failure doesn't mean a bad grade. It means your soul gets eaten by a crocodile-lion-hippo hybrid in the afterlife, while your name is scraped off every monument and your descendants pretend they've never met you. The ritual book is no help. It's written in flowery, metaphysical poetry, like the gods were trying to win a creative writing contest. Instead of steps, you get instructions like, pour the sacred essence of memory upon the brow of the silent one, thrice with the left hand, once under a waxing moon. You don't even know what day it is. You're pretty sure the moon isn't waxing. It's just judging. The worst part? This is just the start. The easy phase. The calm before the anatomical storm. Because next, you're going to have to start cutting. But for now, you look down at your uncle's expressionless face and try to smile back. If Osiris could survive being chopped into 14 pieces, maybe, just maybe, you can survive the first step of this funeral. So the body is clean, sort of. You've scrubbed, doused, whispered, bowed, and recited 3 separate spells that may or may not have just been song lyrics about grain storage. But none of that matters now, because what comes next is where the real panic sets in. It's called evisceration, a charming little term that means you're about to take out someone's internal organs, using tools last sharpened during the reign of Khufu. And who performs this sacred act? That would be you. The priest has handed you a knife. It's not shaped like any knife you've ever seen. It's more like a bronze letter opener cursed by a vengeful librarian. There's no handle, no instructions. Just a glint of sun on metal and the words, begin the incision on the left flank. Do not hit the spine. The gods will notice. Cool. Totally comforting. You glance at your uncle's body, now glistening under the midday sun, and try to locate what you think is the left flank. You pause. You whisper another spell. You close your eyes. You stab. A high-pitched noise escapes your throat. Definitely not holy. The flesh splits with an awful squish pop, and your hands immediately start trembling. Blood trickles out, mixing with the wine and sweat already on your fingers. The smell is unbelievable, like someone tried to roast fish in a tomb and then forgot it for 3 seasons. The priest watches you for a moment, then sighs. Remove the stomach first. It's where the sins gather. What sins? Exactly, you want to ask? His addiction to sesame cakes, his habit of sleeping during midday prayers, his tendency to miscalculate grain taxes. But there's no time for sarcasm, only scooping. You plunge your fingers in, and the warmth makes you gag. You fumble for shape, texture, anything that says this is probably an organ. What you extract is gelatinous and horrifying, but the priest nods. Stomach, good. 1 down, 3 to go. Next is the liver sacred, symbolic, and apparently located somewhere beneath your uncle's resentment toward life. You dig again, trying to ignore the sounds. The priest says nothing, but you feel his judgment. Once each organ is pulled out, and oh yes, you have to identify them manually, you must then place them in canopic jars, each assigned to one of Horus's 4 sons. Because in ancient Egypt, your internal anatomy has a celestial babysitting system. You mutter under your breath. Hapi gets the lungs. Dua Mutef takes the stomach. Imseti, liver, got it. Kebes Senwef, intestines, definitely sounds like a poop guy. If you mess this up, say, you put the intestines in Hapi's jar instead of Kebes Senuef's, your uncle's soul might be denied access to the field of reeds, eternal paradise, gone, because you were too squeamish to distinguish between gut types. So, you triple check, you sniff, you squint, you pray. Eventually, all the sacred viscera are lined up like some twisted banquet, offering each one snug inside a painted clay jar with the head of a falcon, jackal, human, or baboon. You look at your hands, red, sticky, shaking. Now seal the body with natron. The priest says, natron is the ancient Egyptian version of baking soda on steroids. It dehydrates the body, pulling out all the moisture to keep it preserved. Think of it as holy desiccant, the kind you would find in a shoebox. Except it's meant to stop your uncle from rotting before you finish his death cosplay. You rub the salt all over the open cavity, under the armpits, inside the eyelids. The priest corrects you. Don't forget behind the ears. The gods listen. You want to scream, you want to cry. Instead, you pack his body like it's a sacred fish fillet and you're the worst sous chef in the afterlife. As you step back, arms coated in salt and regret, you realize you haven't eaten, drank, or blinked in hours. And it's still only noon. You thought taking the organs out was the worst part. And it was, briefly. But now comes the ancient Egyptian version of putting it all back together except nothing goes back in. And you're about to develop a personal vendetta against linen. This phase is called wrapping. In myth, it's poetic. In real life, it's a marathon of cloth, resin, and spiritual sweat. Picture this. You've got a pile of stiff, dusty linen strips, a pot of pine resin that smells like regret, and a body slowly shriveling in the desert heat. Your job. Turn this corpse into something Osiris would swipe right on. The priest hands you a scroll again and announces, "Begin the binding of eternity." Sounds majestic. Except you're halfway through strip number 17 and your hands are already glued together. Why? Because each layer must be soaked in resin, which dries fast, which makes everything stick to everything. You wrap the toes first, carefully, then the feet, ankles, legs. The scroll says you must chant a protective verse for each joint. That's 33 joints. You don't know 33 different verses, so you start improvising. In the name of Osiris, may this ankle be strong. In the name of Horus, may this kneecap not crumble. In the name of anyone listening, please don't let this linen tear. At some point, you're just muttering random food ingredients and hoping the gods are feeling generous. By hour 2, you've reached the arms. Your own arms are covered in blackened sap. Your linen tunic has become a sweat sponge. And your cousin still doing nothing offers commentary like, "I think the nose is crooked." You resist the urge to commit a second funeral. Now comes the head. This is where it gets artistic. You're supposed to wrap it with dignity, symbolism, respect, and also make sure the bandages don't obscure the face. But linen doesn't cooperate. The resin makes it bunch. The sun melts it. Your fingers are trembling. The priest nods. Now insert the amulets. Oh, right, amulets. Dozens of tiny protective charms representing every part of the body, every power of the gods, every cosmic backup plan known to man. You're told to place them between specific layers. The Ujjat eye over the throat, the Jed pillar down the spine, the scarab near the heart, the do not swallow my soul charm. Yes, that's real, just beneath the sternum. If you forget one, the afterlife will know. At this point, you've reached the torso. The body is stiff, the resin is melting, the linen's running low, and you're wondering why no one ever invented scissors. You tear strips by hand. Your fingernails bleed. Now comes the final wrap, a full shroud, top to bottom, tied in sacred knots you absolutely do not remember how to make. The priest shows you once, very slowly, while maintaining eye contact like a disappointed schoolmaster. You mess it up. Twice. Finally, the body is wrapped, mummified, ready for judgment. You are not. You collapse to the floor, sweat-soaked, resin-smeared, and emotionally hollowed out. The priest places a golden mask on the corpse's face. You place your forehead on the floor. The priest says, "Excellent. Now, the ceremony truly begins." You blink. What ceremony? You thought this was it. You were wrong. You're still shaking resin off your hands when the priest mutters those 5 soul-destroying words. Now we remove the brain. You blink. Surely he means metaphorically, or spiritually, or poetically, right? Nope. He hands you a long bronze implement that looks like something between a crochet hook and a weapon invented by a bored dentist with unresolved trauma. "Insert through the nasal passage," he says, like this is some casual Sunday chore. "Stir thoroughly." Wait, stir. Yes. Apparently, In the sacred wisdom of ancient Egypt, the brain isn't revered. It's basically trash, dead weight. The gods don't want it. The afterlife doesn't need it. So, naturally, you're instructed to shove a hooked stick up your uncle's nose and mash his gray matter into soup. You look down at the body, you look at the hook, you look at your own reflection in the shiny glaze of the canopic jars and whisper, "I'm so sorry." And then, like some nightmarish version of making hummus you go in, at first, there's resistance. You hit something solid, bone, sin, regret. You wiggle the hook like you're trying to unlock a cursed door. There's a sudden crack. Something gives. You flinch. The priest nods like that's supposed to happen. "Good," he says. "Now swirl." Swirl like it's a cocktail. You swirl, slowly, gently, then more aggressively, because ancient instructions say the brain must be liquefied enough to pour. You realize you're essentially whisking your dead uncle's thoughts, dreams, and embarrassing memories of his teenage poetry into a gray, chunky slurry. There's no sacred hymn for this, only the soft squelch of history judging you. Then comes the drainage. The priest pulls out a hollow reed tube because apparently suction existed 3,000 years ago and tells you to tilt the head back. "Let gravity assist," he says. Sure, gravity and trauma, that's your new team now. You watch, paralyzed, as the liquefied contents of your uncle's skull slowly drain out through the nostrils like some cursed milkshake. You want to look away, but you can't. It's mesmerizing, horrifying, morally destabilizing. At some point, your cousin passes out. You envy her. After the goo stops flowing, the priest stuffs the skull with linen, resin, and sometimes cinnamon bark, because when you've stirred a man's memories into soup, the least you can do is make him smell like holiday bread. You seal the nostrils with wax. The priest mutters a short spell to protect what's left of the headspace, as he calls it. You think it's ironic there is not much space left for anything now, except divine judgment. And then, like it's just another Tuesday, the priest says, "Next, we paint the face." You're still holding the hook. You're still trembling. You're still not okay. But there's no time for that. Because in ancient Egypt, grief is a privilege you earn after surviving the logistics of the sacred. And you're only halfway to hell. By now, your arms ache, your soul itches, and your dignity is curled up in a fetal position next to the canopic jars. But there's no rest, not when your uncle's face still looks like, well, a dead guy who's been salted, wrapped, and hollowed out like a sacred bread bowl. The priest walks in holding a palette, yes, a literal wooden painter's palette, and a bowl of ochre mixed with fat. "Make him resemble Osiris," he says, as if that's something the average human knows how to do. You've barely mastered wrapping linen like a burrito, and now you're supposed to render divine iconography. He places a tiny charcoal stick in your palm. The eyeliner must be thick, as wide as the Nile. You hesitate, on both eyes. The priest stares. He only has two, doesn't he? You want to explain that this isn't how art works, that the linen's bunched, that the eyelids are barely there, that the resin is pooling, that the lighting is bad, that the goat next door won't stop making eye contact. But none of that matters, because your brush is now your finger. Your canvas is a decomposing face, and your audience is the gods. You begin with the classic Osirian green. Green skin represents rebirth, fertility, divine essence. The problem: it's made from malachite dust mixed with animal fat. The texture is somewhere between slime and chunky hummus. It does not glide, it clumps, it streaks, it smells like moldy copper and failure. You swipe it across your uncle's forehead, it smears. You try again, it flakes. A fly lands on his nose and gets stuck in the pigment. You flick it off. The priest gasps. Careful, that might be symbolic. Of what divine wrath existential absurdity. Next, the lips. Osiris must look serene. Not happy, not sad. Serene. The only problem is, your uncle's mouth is sewn shut and slightly crooked from the salt pulling his cheeks inward. You dab red pigment onto the lips. It looks like he's about to audition for a community theater production of Dead Pharaohs Tell No Tales. You wipe it, try again. Now it looks like he bit a camel. The priest is humming a hymn in the corner. You hate him. Now for the eyes, the famous coal-lined eyes of the gods. You remember the wall paintings, wide black lines sweeping from corner to temple, a gaze that sees the mortal and the immortal alike. You try your best. Your first stroke is bold, confident, slightly diagonal. You do the other side. It's not diagonal. It's more of a panic squiggle. You step back. Your uncle now looks like an undead raccoon. Booma. Fix it, the priest whispers. This is the image the gods will recognize in the afterlife. You reach for more coal. Your hands are shaking. The sun is high overhead, and the sweat dripping from your brow is mixing with pigment. You make one final adjustment, smudge the line, flatten the nose area, and it's not perfect, but it's something. The priest walks over, inspects your work. Long pause. Passable, he says. Now, adorn the headdress. You've never hated the word passable more. The headdress is next to linen hood soaked in blue and gold dye, weighted with beads, shaped to flare like Osiris' ceremonial crown. You place it gently over your uncle's painted face, now shimmering and slightly uneven. The linen hood slips. You adjust it, it slips again. You pin it with beeswax and a prayer. Finally, he looks complete. Divine? No. Convincing? Maybe. Good enough to fool the gods of the underworld from 20 paces in low lighting. Let's hope so. You exhale, the longest breath you have held since sunrise. You've painted the face of a god, or at least a pretty okay imitation of one. You turn to the priest for acknowledgement. He's already opening a new scroll. Next up, the opening of the mouth ceremony. You have no idea what that is. You just know it sounds awful. If you thought painting your uncle's face was the weirdest part of the ritual, buckle up, because now comes a ceremony that sounds like dental work, but is somehow more mystical and more psychologically destabilizing. It's called the opening of the mouth, and it's one of the most sacred acts in all of ancient Egyptian funerary rites. The goal: restore the dead man's ability to eat, speak, and breathe in the afterlife. But the execution, well, it involves tapping a copper tool against your uncle's sealed mouth, eyes, ears, and sometimes nostrils while chanting hymns about awakening divine senses like you're rebooting a mummified iPhone. The priest hands you the ritual tool, a curved bronze blade shaped like a fishhook, called a pesesh kef. It's supposed to symbolize birth. You're not sure how gently massaging a corpse's lips with metal equals spiritual rebirth, but hey, this is theology now. You step up to your uncle's linen-wrapped face, which still looks like a slightly haunted party mask, and gently press the blade to his lips. The priest murmurs behind you, may his mouth be opened, his voice restored, his hunger satisfied in eternity. You repeat it, your voice cracks, your mouth is dry. You tap the blade again, once on each cheek, once between the eyes, once under the chin. The scroll says these gestures break the silence of death. You feel like they're breaking your last functioning brain cell. The second phase involves anointing the mouth with oil. You dip your fingers into a pot of sacred balm, something between frankincense and wet clay, and smear it over the lips. The linen sucks it up instantly. You apply more, it starts to run down the chin. Your cousin winces. The priest raises an eyebrow. You panic and dab with a cloth. The oil spreads like bad news. Next up, speech restoration. Be beastie. Zestures. You must now read a spell aloud while gently striking the mouth with a miniature adze, a woodworking tool repurposed for divine dental activation. Because when gods get metaphorical, they go all the way. You hold the tiny adze like a trembling sculptor and say, I touch your mouth with the blade of iron that comes from the sky. May you speak in the realm of the gods. You tap. Once, twice, the linen doesn't react. The priest nods solemnly. Inside, you're screaming. At some point, you move on to the eyes. The spell for sight involves touching the eyelids and saying, May your gaze pierce the darkness of the west. You whisper it. The sun glares down like it's mocking you. Then the ears, may your ears hear the judgment of the divine tribunal. You tap gently. Your uncle says nothing, obviously, but somehow, you feel like he's judging your form. By the end of the ceremony, you've tapped every inch of this poor man's head, spoken phrases you barely understand, and sweated through another linen tunic. You smell like goat milk, copper, and divine anxiety. The priest raises his arms. It is done. Done. Not even close. Because the next words out of his mouth are, prepare the procession. You freeze. A procession where you walk through town with this, in the sun, in front of actual humans. Oh yes. Because now that your uncle can speak, it's time for him to say his final goodbyes to the land of the living. And guess who gets to carry him? So here you are. It's the hottest part of the day. The sky is a white sheet of divine indifference, and you're standing outside your home, surrounded by half your extended family. The village priesthood, a crying ant, 3 confused goats, and a group of drummers who clearly skipped rehearsal. The priest claps his hands and proclaims, let the procession begin. Let's be clear, this is not a casual stroll. This is an orchestrated spiritual send-off, 1 part holy pilgrimage, 1 part public performance, and 1 part emotionally scarring heat stroke. At the center of it all, your uncle, who is now a glorified prop, wrapped, painted, scented, and lying on a wooden bier that wobbles with every gust of desert wind. And guess who's in the front, you, clutching the front handles of the bier, trying to look reverent and spiritually composed while sweating from parts of your body you didn't know could sweat. The crowd begins to move, slowly, reverently, loudly. The drummers bang out in a rhythmic thump that sounds less like mourning and more like a ritual to summon badly tuned spirits. 2 women wail in shifts, perfectly timed sobs alternating every 10 steps, like they're reading from a shared scroll of emotional quotas. Your cousin is tossing lotus petals into the sand, which promptly blow back into your face. You cough. The priest leads the chant. Everyone follows. You try. You really do. But halfway through O Osiris, open the gate of the west to your son. Your voice cracks and dies like a frog in a sandstorm. People are watching. Neighbors peek from rooftops. Children point and laugh. One very old man yells, he's walking too fast. The gods need time to observe the soul. You slow down. Now the bier tilts. Your uncle's body shifts. The linen wraps creak. For a terrifying moment, you think he's about to roll off and faceplant into a pile of donkey dung. You stabilize barely. Let the soul see the land, the priest shouts. You turn a corner, and the stench of the Nile slaps your face like a wet palm. Sweat pours down your back. You've gone blind in one eye from the sun. Your arms are numb. Your dignity's on fire. And still, it keeps going. You pass by temples, bakeries, livestock pens. Everyone stops. Some bow, some just stare, some sell roasted onions while yelling fresh like the afterlife. Your uncle has never been this popular or this heavy. You begin hallucinating. The eye of Horus appears in the sky, or maybe that's just heat shimmer. You lose track of the chanting. You can't feel your feet. Your cousin starts crying, not the dramatic funeral cry, but the why did we do this kind. Finally, mercifully, you reach the necropolis gates. The priest raises his hands and bellows, we now enter the realm of the sacred. You collapse, figuratively, literally, emotionally, every way a person can collapse. The bier is taken from your hands. A team of temple acolytes carries your uncle the final stretch. You're dragged to the side. Someone hands you a fig. Another pours water on your head. A third mutters, you're doing fine. Only a few more rites. You try to not, you fail, because now that the public show is over, the real madness begins. The journey into the tomb. If someone told you this morning that by sundown you'd be crawling into a stone chamber with a dead uncle, an over-caffeinated priest, and a bag of ritual vegetables, you'd have laughed. You're not laughing now, because here you are, at the gaping mouth of a freshly carved tomb. It's about 6 feet high, 4 feet wide. and smells like ancient limestone, old incense, and long-term spiritual commitment. The priest pauses at the entrance. He throws a handful of natron into the air and mutters something about cleansing the threshold. You're too dehydrated to care. You're still sore from carrying a divine burrito through half of Upper Egypt. One by one, the ritual party enters the tomb. Two acolytes, the wailing aunt, yes, she came, a cow-eyed scribe holding a checklist, and you, the chosen son of the house, which basically means you do the heavy lifting while everyone else mutters poetry and corrects your posture. You duck inside. The tomb is dark, except for the flicker of oil lamps. Shadows crawl across the painted walls, depictions of gods, sacred boats, funerary offerings, and the occasional inexplicable baboon. The air is still, hot, and thick with symbolism. At the center lies a stone platform where your uncle will be placed. It's flanked by statues of Anubis, Horus, and a weirdly cheerful cat goddess you assume is here for spiritual morale. Place him, the priest commands. You and the acolytes lift the bier one last time and lay your uncle's body onto the platform. The weight leaves your arms, but not your conscience. Because now, you perform the last rites. First, the offering ritual. You're handed trays of food bread, beer, onions, dried fish, lettuce, and told to lay them at the foot of the bier in a very specific order. The scribe watches. Every item corresponds to a line in the Book of the Dead. You forget the order, you improvise. Bread, onion, beer, fish, wrong. Fish, onion, beer, bread, wrong again. Let him pass into eternity with the sweetness of life. The priest says, as you nervously rearrange snacks on a stone slab like it's the most stressful charcuterie board in cosmic history. Next, the incense ritual. You light pellets of kaifi made of honey, myrrh, cinnamon, and something that smells suspiciously like donkey hair. The smoke fills the tomb. The scribe coughs. You gag. The priest waves it toward the corpse and says, let this scent awaken the ka. You nod, pretending you know what that means. Then the ritual of the feet. You kneel and anoint your uncle's feet with oil. The scroll reads, so he may walk into the field of reeds. You hope that's metaphorical, because the man hasn't walked since breakfast and is currently missing most of his organs. Finally, the Declaration of Innocence. This one's the kicker. You're required to recite 42 specific denials of sin called the negative confessions, each one addressed to a different god. I did not steal. I did not lie. I did not slay the innocent. I did not curse the gods. I did not pollute the river. I did not overcook lentils. You stumble at number 23. The priest corrects you. You repeat. You mispronounce. The priest glares. By the end, your throat is dry, your knees hurt, and your brain is melting under the pressure of ancient moral auditing. The priest finally declares the soul is now ready. Ready for what? You don't ask, because now comes the sealing of the tomb, and once that slab goes over the door, things get real. You're kneeling in sweat-soaked linen. Your mouth tastes like incense ash and regret. Your knees are imprinted with tomb floor geometry. And the priest just announced it is time. Time for what? For a nap, for your overdue therapy session. For Osiris to offer you a job with dental. No, it's time to seal the tomb. You stand up barely. Your legs are shaking like papyrus in a monsoon. The oil lamps flicker, casting giant shadows on the mural-covered walls. Your uncle lies in perfect stillness on the bier, cocooned in linen, face painted like a divine wax museum exhibit. Around him the offerings, the spells, the amulets, the symbolic onions, and the gods all watching. The priest raises both arms. Let the journey begin. Cue drama. A procession of acolytes begins carrying in large stone slabs, limestone blocks carved to fit over the tomb's entrance. Each slab is engraved with protective prayers and symbolic curses. You read one that says, "May the scorpion feast on the bones of thieves," comforting. The slabs are heavy. You help drag one into place. It takes 6 of you. Your shoulder nearly dislocates. Your cousin pulls a muscle. The priest, of course, supervises without breaking a sweat. "Careful," he says. "This stone bears the name of Anubis." You mutter, "Great! Wouldn't want to drop the dog god." Each slab is laid like punctuation, final, heavy, absolute. The priest begins chanting the seal of the West, a long, sonorous prayer invoking gods of night, shadow, and eternal silence. The sound echoes off the chamber walls. You feel it in your bones. As the last slab is positioned, you notice a tiny gap left open just wide enough to slide in one final item. It's your turn. You've been given a Shabti, one of those little figurines shaped like a miniature worker, meant to serve your uncle in the afterlife. You're supposed to whisper something personal into its ear, a final blessing, a goodbye, a wish. You hesitate. Your mind blanks. What do you even say to a man whose guts you pulled out and whose nose you desecrated with a hook? You lean in and whisper, "I hope this was worth it, old man." Then you slide the figure into the gap. The acolyte pushes the final stone into place. With a bone-shuddering scrape, it locks into the wall. Final. Forever. A silence settles over the tomb. It's not peace, it's gravity. You step back. The priest holds up a jar of red paint, dips his fingers, marks the stones with a sigil the eye of Horus, watching, judging, sealing the door between worlds. He mutters, "Let no man open what has been closed in the name of the gods." You look at your hands trembling, cut, stained with oil, resin, sweat, and paint. You are not the same person who entered this tomb. You're something else now, a brother of grief, a witness to madness, an accomplice to cosmic bureaucracy. Outside, the sun is setting, the tomb is sealed, the ritual is done, but no one tells you what happens next. Because in ancient Egypt, they teach you how to prepare for death, but not how to survive it. You step out of the tomb and into a wall of dying sunlight. It's golden, beautiful, cruel, the kind of beauty that doesn't care who you are or what you've just done. The sand glows like powdered fire, the palm fronds barely stir, and somewhere off in the distance, a water buffalo sneezes. It's over. That should feel like relief. It doesn't. You're soaked in salt, both yours and your uncle's. Your hands shake with muscle fatigue and something deeper. Your body stinks of resin and sacred smoke. Your soul feels like a linen strip that got left out in the sun too long frayed. Brittle, barely functional. The priest says nothing. He just nods at you as he turns to leave. His part is done. He's off to prepare for the next divine unboxing. Your aunt collapses into a pile of wailing and fig wrappers. Your cousin vomits behind a bush. You just stare at the sealed stone door behind you. That's it. He's gone. Entombed. Preserved for eternity. Or until the next grave robber comes looking for a clay amulet and some lightly salted liver. You want to feel something noble, like pride, closure, reverence. What you actually feel is hunger, back pain, and the terrifying urge to laugh. Because the entire day, every spell, every chant, every offering was performed for one soul's chance at making it through. They desenkoru the cosmic DMV of the afterlife. A 70-day ritual process designed to convince a room full of crocodile-headed gods that your uncle wasn't trash. And you were the intern, the understudy, the underpaid understudy with blood on your tunic and a poem stuck in your head that started as a funerary hymn but now rhymes with "help me." You walk back to the village. Your sandals break, because of course they do. You limp through streets that feel foreign now. Shops, animals, temple walls all exactly the same. But you're not. You've seen the inside of death. You've rearranged it, decorated it, given it eyeliner. People greet you. May he reach the field of reeds. You nod. You smile. You say, "May it be so." Inside, your brain whispers, "May I never do that again." When you finally reach your home, you wash your hands in silence. The blood doesn't come off, not completely. It's in the folds of your fingernails. It's behind your ears. It's inside your nose. Alongside the cinnamon, you might never eat bread again. You sit. Your family gathers. They want you to recount what happened in the tomb, how beautiful it was, how peaceful he looked, how smooth the ceiling went, how glorious the chants were. You lie. You say it was perfect. You say he's ready. You say the gods were pleased. They nod, misty-eyed. They say, "You did well." You say, "Thanks." You don't say, "I think I'm spiritually concussed." They offer you food. You can't eat. They sing a hymn. You can't hear. You're already drifting into sleep, upright, swaying like a palm tree on the brink of collapse. And as you finally fall back into your straw mat this time, not as a mourner or embalmer or glorified linen technician, you hear a voice in your head. It's not your uncle. It's not the gods. It's your own saying, "So this is how eternity starts. Not with fire, not with music, with salt and sand and a hook through the nose. It's been 3 days since the tomb was sealed. The bruises on your arms are yellowing. The cuts on your hands are crusting. The priest has moved on to his next divine client. Your cousin has gone back to weaving. The goats have forgotten everything. But you can't sleep. Not because of ghosts, though, let's be honest. After embalming your uncle's brain through his nose, you'd understand if he dropped by to complain. No, it's something else, something deeper. A buzzing in your mind, a tightness behind your ribs, a whisper that started when the final stone slid into place. It's saying, you weren't ready, you weren't worthy, you did everything right, and somehow, it still doesn't feel like enough. You lie on your mat at night, staring up at the reed ceiling, remembering the feel of his ankle in your hand, the sound of bones shifting under linen, the weight of the painted mask. You replay the chant you messed up, the amulet you maybe put in the wrong place, the second you rushed through because the sun was too hot and the resin was burning your skin. You remember how many times the priest said perfect when you knew he meant passable, and the silence of the gods, deafening. No sign, no dream, no whisper from the field of reeds. You ask the temple scribe if that's normal. He says, sometimes it takes time. You ask how long. He shrugs, sometimes eternity. Great. Now you're haunted by existential hold music. You try to distract yourself. You pound grain. You gather reeds. You scrub your tunic for the 15th time. But the resin doesn't wash out, and neither does the feeling that something sacred got smudged, that you performed a holy ritual but missed the holiness. You walk past the tomb one afternoon, just to check. You say it's to sweep the sand. In reality, you just want to hear anything, but there's no whisper through the crack, no warm breeze, no fluttering of ibis feathers, just hot air and your own shallow breath. A merchant offers you a scarab amulet blessed by Thoth. You buy it, even though you don't believe him. You tie it to your wrist like a child clinging to a myth. You don't tell anyone. One night, your aunt begins a morning song by the river. It's soft, unrehearsed, unlike the theatrical wailing from before. You hear her voice crack halfway through, then silence. You walk over. She looks at you and says, "I miss his stupid laugh." You say, "I remember the way he snorted when he laughed too hard." She smiles. He always did that. And suddenly, it hits you you've spent the past week burying a god but not mourning a man. The rituals are designed for Osiris, for the pharaohs, for cosmic equilibrium, but for your uncle, for the jokes he told, for the time he gave you figs after you failed at market, for the way he muttered complaints about the neighbor's goats. There's no spell for that. There's just you, and memory, and regret. You realize you never told him thank you, that you were too busy chanting about intestines and trying not to vomit to whisper the only words that ever mattered. You mattered. You sit by the river until morning, holding the scarab on your wrist, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he hears you now. You say it out loud, once. I hope you made it. No wind, no sign, just sunrise. But for the first time in days, the silence doesn't hurt quite as much. It's been a week. The tomb is quiet. The neighbors are louder than ever. Life, it seems, has bounced back like a stubborn camel. But you are not bouncing. You walk slower, you think in hymns, you dream in linen, and somehow Without planning it, you've become something else entirely. A vessel of memory, a walking scroll, a relic. It starts when your youngest cousin asks, "Did it hurt when you took out his heart?" You blink. "We didn't take his heart. That stays." "Oh," she says, disappointed. Later, someone from another village visits. He heard you did a textbook Osirian embalming. He asks if you can advise his family. Their grandmother is leaky. Then the temple scribe sends you a wax tablet with a note. "We're beginning a training group for lay ritual assistants. Would you be interested in mentoring? Because apparently if you've once inserted a bronze hook into your uncle's skull and painted his face with green paste while chanting in 6 tenses, you're now qualified to help others do the same. You want to say no, to scream it, to renounce everything embalming adjacent forever, but you don't. Instead, you stare at your hands, the same ones that held sacred oils, pressed linen to still flesh, and whispered final blessings into carved figurines. You touch the scarab bracelet on your wrist. It's chipped now. You keep it anyway, because here's the thing no one tells you. When someone dies in ancient Egypt, their body isn't the only thing preserved. So is the memory of them, the weight of them, the echo they leave in everyone who helped carry them across the threshold. You carry that weight. You're still carrying it. And the gods, the gods they saw. They saw when you faltered in the negative confessions. They saw when you dropped a canopic jar lid, when you hesitated with the paint, when your heart wasn't sure, but your hands kept moving. And instead of striking you down, they let you finish. Because that's what rituals are. Not perfection, but movement, effort, devotion under duress. You remember a line from the scroll, "The body is clay, the act is breath." You didn't breathe right it the whole way through, but you breathed. And maybe that's enough. You begin helping a neighbor prepare incense for a coming funeral. He asks how to fold the linen over the ankles. You show him, without thinking. You light the oil lamp with practiced ease. You chant the first line of a funerary hymn just to test the air. And in that moment, halfway between muscle memory and mysticism, you realize, this is what it means to be alive in the land of the dead. You remember, you repeat, you carry. Not because the gods demand it, but because someone has to. The scrolls call it Mahat, truth, order, balance. They say it's what keeps the cosmos from imploding, what separates the Nile's sacred flood from the chaos of a sandstorm, what lets the sun rise every morning and descend into the underworld every night without slamming into a celestial crocodile and ruining the divine commute. In theory, Mahat is the domain of gods, pharaohs, priests. In reality, it's your problem now, because the rituals are done. Your uncle is sealed into stone. The mourners have dispersed. The priest has moved on to someone else's intestines. But Mahat lingers, like dust in a closed tomb, like resin under your fingernails. It shows up in small things when you catch your sister trying to shortchange a date seller, and you instinctively correct her. When you see a neighbor spit in the Nile and feel a ripple of dread, like the gods might personally revoke your afterlife access. When a friend makes a cruel joke about another family's failed burial, and you find yourself saying, "That's not Mahat," you hear yourself say it, and something clicks. Because Mahat isn't a law, it's not carved in stone like the codes of later kings. It's not enforced by guards with whips. It's heavier than that. It's internal. You feel it every time you walk by your uncle's tomb and don't speak his name. Every time you forget to leave bread at the family altar. Every time your mind wanders during a temple hymn. That weight, that imbalance, that whisper you are out of alignment. The scrolls never warned you that Mahat would be this personal, that it would sneak into your joints and your guilt, wrap itself around your choices like a second layer of linen. You thought death was the end of duty. Turns out, it's only the start, because now you carry the balance. Your uncle's name, you say it daily. The altar, you sweep it. The family, you lead them. Not because you want to, but because the alternative chaos, forgetfulness, spiritual rot is worse. You remember what the priest said during the negative confessions? He who disturbs Mahat is eaten twice, first by the gods, then by time. You finally understand. The real test wasn't the embalming, the painting, the procession. It's this, the daily act of keeping order in a world that wants to tilt toward disorder. The quiet, sacred rebellion of remembering you're dead when everyone else forgets. Of correcting injustice no one else notices. Of keeping your soul lighter than a feather while the world drops rocks into your chest. You're no priest. You're barely a competent embalmer. But you're trying, and maybe that's what the gods are really watching. Not perfection, just resistance. Resistance to forget. Resistance to laziness. Resistance to entropy. You're not a god, but you are one small, sweating, linen-wrapped vessel of Mahat. And that's terrifying, but also kind of extraordinary. It's market day. Children are screaming. Chickens are sprinting for reasons unknown. A man is arguing about the price of lentils with the kind of fury normally reserved for divine betrayal. Everything's back to normal, except you. You stand in the middle of the square, the sun on your back, sand in your teeth, and something ancient moving beneath your ribs. A shift, a crack, a realignment. Because here's the cruel joke no one explains until you've wrapped a body, prayed over it, dragged it through town, and sealed it behind stone. The dead don't vanish. They anchor you. Your uncle is gone, but not really. He's in the way you touch your forehead before entering a temple now. He's in how you listen during funerals instead of drifting off. He's in the way you speak his name in passing, quiet but constant, like a small drum beat beneath your words, Hotep, Hotep, Hotep. You used to think death was a moment. Now you know it's a season. A slow-burning winter of the soul where memories bloom in strange places, in scent, in sand, in silence. You see it in others too. Your aunt no longer wails theatrically. Now she sings softly by the door at sunset. No script, no priest, just melody and grief. Your cousin rewrites the family prayer tablet not because anyone told her to, but because the ink felt wrong. She adds your uncle's name beside Osiris, as if to say, same status now, both divine, both missed. The ritual was about his journey, but the aftermath is about yours. You feel like a cracked jar filled with hot water, fragile, glowing, weirdly full. You haven't cried since the ceiling, but tears sneak out anyway randomly, inconveniently. During goat sales and fig deliveries, you stop hiding them. One night, a neighbor dies. His family asks the priest for help. The priest sends for you, you freeze. You want to say no, that you're just the nephew, the reluctant embalmer, the guy who once painted an eyebrow crooked and nearly sparked divine outrage. But the priest insists, you've walked the path. He says, that's more than most. So you do it, not everything. Not the whole ritual. Just one part you guide the eldest son in folding the linen. You whisper the name of Osiris. You offer him the same words the priest once told you. Breathe. Let the body be clay. Let the act be breath. And when it's done, you go home, you sit on your mat, and something eases, not disappears, just shifts all. Like a weight being set down, not gone, but held properly. That night, you dream. You see your uncle not grand, not glowing, not divine, just smiling. And for the first time since he died, you wake up without guilt choking your throat. You look out over the Nile. The stars are flickering like teeth in the mouth of the sky. You whisper, I hope you made it. And this time, you don't need a sign, you just believe. You're back in the temple courtyard, but this time, you're not holding a hook, not clutching a linen shroud, not smeared with resin or apologizing to an ibis for stepping on sacred sand. You're just standing, alive, very alive, and profoundly changed. The priest approaches, older than yesterday somehow, or maybe it's just that you now see the weight in his posture, the same one you've been carrying since the moment you unsealed that jar of natron and thought, this can't be right. He says nothing. You nod. He nods back. It's the kind of nod that says, we buried someone. We buried part of ourselves. We came back, mostly. And in that moment, you realize what no hymn ever told you. Osiris didn't die to teach you about death. He died to show you what living with loss really looks like. Because it's not just about walking someone to the edge of eternity, it's about what happens after. When the body's gone, the tomb is sealed, and your hands still remember the shape of grief. That's the real ritual. That's the part no one tells you about. They don't tell you that the embalming process is 30 steps long, because that's roughly how many times your soul will break before it's over. They don't tell you that every prayer you chant is a small funeral for your own comfort. They don't tell you that by the time the gods are done watching you, you won't be the same shape anymore. You'll be smaller in some places, wiser in others, frayed around the edges but bound tighter where it counts. You'll be one of them, the living dead, walking with memory stitched into your skin, carrying a name that is no longer just someone else's, but part of yours now. Because when you wrapped your uncle's limbs in linen, you were also wrapping time. When you painted his face, you were painting history. When you sealed that tomb, you were sealing your old self away too. And here's the truth. Osiris only died once. You died 30 times, once for each step. Once for each moment you whispered the name of someone who will never speak again. And yet you're still here, breathing, standing, alive. Not because the gods spared you, but because you dared to carry the weight and not collapse. You've walked through death's workshop and came out a craftsman, a memory keeper, a balance bearer, a human being who now knows that eternity isn't something you find. It's something you build one name, one act, one breath at a time. So no, you're not immortal. You'll die one day too, but your uncle will live through you, and through whoever you teach next, and whoever they teach after, and that's eternity. Not gold, not monuments, but the echo of someone you loved said aloud in someone else's mouth, forever.